Hello and welcome to the Billowing Hilltop podcast. I'm here with Fiona. Hello, Fiona.
Hello.
Welcome. Fiona is from the What Am I Rolling podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Fiona and I have chatted away about all things role play, podcast. We talked about one-shots. We talked about rule systems. We talked about just everything. It's a fascinating listen. Fiona's got massive experience around the gaming industry, but we can't really do justice to our chat in this little segment. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the whole of our chat at the end of this episode. That is after the credits. So stick around. But for now, Fiona, tell us all about your podcast, and but that's it. Tell us all about it.
Just tell you all about it. I can do that.
Yeah.
So I run What Am I Rolling, which is a twice monthly RPG one-shot podcast. Every couple of weeks, usually twice a month, I'll put out an episode or a couple of episodes around a certain game system, and just my dream is basically to run people through new systems that they're not really played before, they're not really tried, and just create different stories from them. Because I do think one of my big sort of tenets is that I really want more people to play in more RPGs that aren't necessarily the big ones, and just create stories together that they wouldn't thought was possible. And that's basically it. And we've been going for about 4 years. So yeah.
There's an awful lot of shows that you've done.
There's an awful lot of content.
Readers, I beseech, I implore you, check out the What Am I Rolling podcast and stick around for our chat at the end of this episode. And also Dragon Meet.
Yes.
You're going to be at Dragon Meet 3rd of December in the podcast zone.
Yes.
So are we. So we'll see you there.
Yeah, 100%.
At dragonmeet.co.uk for info and tickets. But that really is it. No more news or information, I promise. Thanks, Fiona.
Oh, thank you.
Let us push on with episode 170 of the Billowing Hilltop podcast. Say Jello, wave goodbye. Good evening, everybody.
We killed the G Cube and
good evening, all. I'm here with Lucas. Hello, Lucas.
Hello,
Johnny,
hello.
running the intelligently restored Uncle Buggy. Dan. Hello, Dan.
Hello.
And Graham.
Hello, Mike.
Graham. Hello, readers. We are back. We need to do a quick recap, I think, about where we are. Anybody want to do it, or should I do it?
I should just point out
we've had
that
2 episodes down here. We've just gone back and we're scouting.
I got some old chips together and did a little bit of a 3D print, and Paul is now this strange electrical object. He can speak using Morse codes
were you
and
listening
buzzes.
to his instructions last week, dear readers? As you will be aware, there was a bit of a catastrophic breakdown in our constructed version of Paul. The rubber band that so much depended upon snapped at a crucial juncture.
Vulcanized.
We've been interpreting his wishes ever since. Basically, we've wired up a couple of diodes, and Lucas has been just trying to
he's learned
wing
Morse
it, really.
code now. So
it's
great.
like
So he will be
experiment.
Yeah.
He'll be signalling to us from his pot, I think we'll call it, his beaker.
It's beaker of cockles.
That's an odd thing to have said. And
Odder than
we
Paul
will push
signalling
on.
from a pot. You think that's odder?
Last week, they fought the Knights of Chios in the lower level of the ziggurat. They fled back to the library. They sent Alessandra on a couple of scouting missions, and the second scouting mission, on which they followed her at a sort of, cowardly safe distance, she has discovered a change in things, searching for the chittering beetles. She's found that the way west through the chambers to the north of the Sea of Worms seems to be blocked by some kind of weird semi-opaque
G-cube, man. It's a G-cube
thing with stuff floating in it. One of the things floating in it was a green, jagged, glowing crystal, just like the crystal they retrieved from the many-eyed blancmange monster underneath the Evenstar Arena, the one that they used to... What was it called, that thing? The Ulgastaster.
That's right.
The one that they used to critically damage the Ulgastaster during their crunch match in the final at the Gladiatorial Games. That's where we left it. So
maybe that will be
useful
useful against the Chaos Knights, do you think?
Yes. You got that.
Maybe.
I'm amazed you figured that out. I hadn't got that.
Very good. Are we going to follow Alessandra then?
Well, Alessandra's not committed to anything beyond that. That's where I've left it. So she can see into the chamber full of bodies. Readers, there's a chamber full of bodies. And then pass that into this, what you think is a gelatinous cube. She hasn't gone right. Right is a little passageway that heads towards some double doors, through which she heard the sound of faint trickling water. You lot are all in the big worm chamber. What do you want to do?
Is this the time to do a silence on the gelatinous cube? Fire our lightning at the gelatinous cube, is forced to move. The creatures come out. The chittering things hopefully are right behind.
Yes.
And we engage.
I was going to suggest something similar.
What do we think, guys?
Sounds reasonably good.
I don't know if you remember from last week, but it was Alessandra's sense that rather than it being a giant distance between herself and the chittering beetles that was keeping her safe, that there may be an obstruction between her and the chittering beetles. Well, this could be the obstruction.
Yeah, so we think there's a gelatinous cube in this little
There's
corridor.
an aperture to the west of the corridor with the...
We think the beetles are probably the other side of that aperture, but we don't know that.
You don't know it.
We don't know that.
You don't know that. You don't know that.
But we could
Yep.
drop a silent spell kind of on the G cube.
Mm-hmm.
Why would we do it there? Why wouldn't we do it here? Then they can't move past it. It's in between us and them.
That's not a bad idea. So for the readers, there's another corridor before we
The
get
other
to that
pinch
room.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, there's 2 pinch points. Graham's signalling the one that's closest to us. I think that's not a bad idea. So, but it depends if I was thinking that we would send the fighters in to block the far corridor. But you're right.
So you're suggesting
We could block this one, but we're assuming that they'll come after us.
Yeah. We don't know what's down the double doors at the end of the corridor that might pop out.
So,
Yes.
Yes,
That always happens.
Alessandra's saying something.
but I've got a wall of force, so we can always block off one area, one side or the other.
I think I ought to remind you of something because I don't think this came up last week. And without, well, you say, Lucas, that you've got some kind of workable Paul there, but I don't see much evidence of it. What Paul is probably not able to signal to you is that when Sandy approached those double doors down the corridor to the east, she felt a strange...
got thirsty.
Yes. Oh, you do? No, somebody does listen. Yeah.
Thirsty?
It was just a guess. Why are you never hungry in the desert?
Because of
the
all the
sandwiches
sandwiches there.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Right, I'm going to... Right, so Buggy's doing the silent spell. I'm flying over to there with...
Hold on,
Parker,
because
but
the
with
first thing
Parker.
we want to do is Sandy can... You don't want to move in.
Well, Sessions moves up and does a silent spell, and Buggy does a silent spell
Alessandra
there.
needs to
Buggy
presume...
did silent
I
spell.
don't know.
Well,
A
okay.
gelatinous cube's aware?
The trouble with me doing the silent spell is if I take damage, then I'll have to make a roll to keep it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's true. So Sessions does the silent spell.
Okay. We're just firing range things at this G cube.
I don't have to.
Can Sandy
That's why I was
do
suggesting that we do the silence up there.
Can
and go
Sandy
and
do
engage it.
assassinate on the
But
gelatinous
you can do it
cube?
there.
I don't mind.
Does that work? Is it aware? Is it something you can assassinate? Don't see why not.
You probably can. It sounds
Does it
weird.
roll
but you
initiative?
probably can do it.
It's a cube. Don't they have things like tremor sense or
Yeah,
something?
well, what I'm saying is before we
might
start doing spells and things that will make it realise something's happened, Sandy should be able to get in an attack, because then that's the sneak attack, critical, roll at advantage attack.
Because it's surprised.
Yeah.
Are you moving up, Graham?
Yeah, which I'm not sure which one you want me to do it at, but I'm happy to move up with that Uncle Buggy.
Whichever one you think. I thought, yeah, so we do it at range. We attack at range through the silence, which we do.
Okay, so you want me to put it here?
Yeah, or maybe there.
In the first corridor section.
It's a 10-foot radius, is it? Or 20 foot?
Question, it is 20-foot radius sphere.
So the far edge is across that far corridor. So if you centered it here,
Yeah.
its edge would be...
It's across both entrances, yeah?
Yes, yeah. What do you think?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can signal this to Paul, Lucas, but tonight's beer is from the Awful Brewdog. Alcohol-free Hazy Jane. Embrace the opaque is the annoying marketing slogan on the side of the can. Anyway, there we are.
So for the
not bad.
reader's benefit, Session's doing a silent spell centered in the middle of the second chamber that's going to
Chamber with all the bodies in it.
extend across the two entrances to that chamber.
We're going to call this room the Chamber of Long Sleep, if that's
Right,
helpful.
okay.
With all of the bodies in it, you're going to center your silent spell in the very middle of it.
And
Nothing, no reaction to that.
Do you think we should actually go into the silent spell in case our fighting draws the attention of Chaos Knights or any other baddies?
Yes.
So, Mike, I want to center a fairy fire. So I'm moving up to the first pinch point
Yes.
to the west.
Looking into the room with the corpses
In the
and the
lobby.
silent spell. Yeah.
Yeah, looking beyond it where we think the cube of force is. The cube of force?
G
Did I say
cube,
cube of
jelly
force?
cube.
I think there's a cube of force there. I want to cast my spell, center it 60 foot away, about 10 foot into that darkness bit.
What's your dark vision range?
It is...
It's going to be 30 or 60 feet, I'm guessing. If you can't find it, then your dark vision's awful.
You can see dim light within 60 feet of you, as if it were bright light.
Well, I'm saying that you can therefore see a little bit past the G cube. That's my determination.
Yeah.
I'm going to reveal a little.
Another 10
I'm going
foot.
to reveal a little arc. You can see 10 foot of floor beyond. You can see a bit of a beetle.
How tall is the aperture? How high is the ceiling?
12 foot the ceiling.
So if there's a G cube there, there'll be 2 foot above it.
We aren't going to get into this too much, but no, the cube, if it is a cube, is not a cube. It's a whatever.
Right, so it's filling the space.
It's a brick. Yeah, it's filling the space. If it wasn't filling the space, you'd be in terrible trouble from the beetles. So, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Anyway, you can see a chittery beetle. Just the front mandibles and limbs and a bit of its carapace and head. It is about 5 or 6 feet back from the second pinch point. Therefore, you presume from this gelatinous oblong.
Okay. Can I target a spell the other side of the G cube?
If it says a target within range that you can see, then yes. But you have to have line of effect.
Or a target within range.
We can have a fantastic discussion. Let's pick the spell.
We've had this before, haven't we?
We
Yes.
have. It's
Several
about whether or not
times.
there needs to be a line of effect. If there needs to be a line of effect, then no.
Each object in a 20-foot cube within range.
What's the spell?
Fairy fire.
Didn't we decide that everything needed a line of effect?
I think we kind of did.
Not to open up an old argument that actually I was arguing
We
against.
discussed the fact that you do need a line of effect or something. Oh, I can't remember. There was something about a magic missile in the glass maze, and I can't fucking remember what we decided. We decided that we thought that you should be able to target somebody in a glass maze with a magic missile, but actually it turns out you can't. I think there has to be no cover or something from the thingy
you
with the
needed
what's
a
it.
line of effect.
It's in the rule targets, isn't it?
I really don't want to get into this. Actually, you know what? I quite like these discussions. I'm happy to get into it.
I think it sounds odd that you can do a spell beyond something like a G cube.
If it is a G cube, the G cube is not an object. The G cube is a creature. If there was an ogre standing in that doorway,
The targeting rule is relatively clear. A clear path to the target. To target something, you must have a clear path to it, so it can't be behind total cover.
there you go.
I would wager that a gelatinous cube is total cover.
We're in an odd area,
Yes.
aren't we?
Well, if it was solid, it would be total
It
cover.
is solid.
So it's...
Yeah.
It's
It's
just
both
transparent.
creature
yeah.
and obstruction.
Yeah.
Cool.
In which case, I can't get the beetles with the fairy fire.
No.
Yet.
Shall I do it anyway? Just don't do it on the cube.
No. Save it for the Beatles.
What do you
Sure,
like?
I
I think
Get
the first thing that needs to happen is that Alessandra needs to get the sneak attack in on the cube.
Do you know what I could do?
Yeah.
Dissonant whispers on the cube. If it fails its save, it has to move away from me over the beetle,
Yeah, but let Alessandra...
potentially paralysing the beetle.
That's not bad.
Let's try
Do
that.
we want to paralyse the beetle? Surely we want to lure the beetle towards us into the silence.
Sandy
Do you
can
think?
do...
Do you think the
Might be
dead
quite
bodies
funny.
in this big chamber that we've done the silent spell in are going to animate?
Yeah, or
I
something
mean,
gonna
there's
wake
always
up,
something
aren't they?
like that.
It's entirely possible.
Yeah. In which case we're going to run away again. So.
Yeah, we always get caught out.
And
like
where's this crystal hanging in the G cube?
If it's a G cube, it is in the pretty
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
in the heart of the G cube.
In the middle. So we detonate a bomb in the middle of the G cube, smashing the crystal, releasing its magical undead killing power.
Or maybe it's suppressing the thing that's keeping all those bodies lying down.
Oh,
that's a good
yeah,
point.
Yeah. Maybe they wake up with a chittering.
But then when we did it before, we smashed it and it did damage. It's like a undead grenade.
Yes.
Why don't we just do one thing at a time?
Exactly.
You need
Just-
that
that's
to kill all
exactly
the
what
dead
it was
bodies
like.
when they reanimate.
Let's just do range things on the G cube.
Maybe we
See,
need it so that when they
pay attention.
reanimate...
I do occasionally pay attention.
What are you looking for?
You know, pick up
Validation.
bits and
I
pieces
know
here
this.
and there.
Should we just do range things on the G cube?
Yeah, I haven't got many ranged
I
things.
haven't
That's
either,
my
but-
point.
It's not going to have that many hit points, is it?
Pick up and smash it then.
Could go up and just smash it, yeah.
Yeah, in the silent spell, Parker's prepared to do that. Sandy gets a sneak attack. You do the dissonant whispers.
Things stick to a G cube, though, don't they?
They get paralysed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it
I'm
hits
sure I've
you.
got a
But if I
But Parker
Run up,
can
hit
do
it, run away
range
again.
attacks on it.
You might find you're leaving your weapons behind.
yeah.
Yeah. Parker can attack it from.
So
15.
I'm going to start with a Dissonant Whispers.
Well, you're
We
not. Because
haven't
first
even
of
got
all,
initi-
Alessandra is going to have his basically.
Well, is she going to be
her
surprised
attack.
anymore because of the silent spell?
I think that the idea here is that you have the instigating action. Nobody's particularly unaware. I mean, if it's a gelatinous cube, it doesn't really do that anyway, right? It's just sitting there.
Does a silent spell have a verbal component?
Let's not get into that. What are you doing? Who are you starting with? What's the deal? Your least favourite
Sandy is
question.
going to have an attack
Mm-hmm.
on the gelatinous cube,
Okay.
an assassination attack,
I
and
understand.
Sessions is going to do the silence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So it's sort of all of that chatter was we just inserted that into the millisecond between sessions casting
That's right.
the silence.
Basically, it is a game. It's not intended to fully mimic reality.
No, not fully.
You know,
Yeah, but I
it's a
mean,
game.
fully is doing an awful lot of work in that sentence, Bonds. It's like you've managed to basically have this prolonged dialogue between you
Yeah,
in an instant.
hypothetical.
Hypothetical.
Yeah, but obviously, we did all this planning before we went down.
We're like supercomputers. We're doing like a
Okay.
journey
We've
of the
never
bearing in
information
mind
second.
that you've all got you're all wearing earplugs. I think the fact that you've managed to collude on this. Anyway, fuck it. Right, Sandy, off you go with your shot.
Here is a roll.
Thank you very much. I was getting a bit
It's an
pickish.
armor class. Oh my god, what's all that?
I don't know that gone all that well.
10d6, 3d8, and a 1 on a d8.
You rolled a 1.
It's a 1, yeah. I rolled a 1.
Okay, you rolled a 1, so you missed
Maybe
the
it's
gelatinous
time.
cube.
Hang on.
The Orc dice.
Hang on, I'm getting some Morse code in. I'm being told here Morse code is saying Ort dice.
Okay,
Reroll it.
right. Oh, okay.
There we go. Hitting armor class at least 24.
Well, that's a hit on the thing in the doorway. If it's a gelatinous cube, we're not certain.
For how much damage?
I mean, the only thing we know about gelatinous cubes is that they don't take damage.
Oh,
Anyway,
also the other. Hang on. Sorry, one. Not, so also she rolls at advantage.
I don't think we need to
If
worry
you
about
roll
that,
at
do we?
advantage, does the 1 still count as a critical
No, it
miss?
doesn't.
No,
you
well, yeah,
picked
you'd
the
have
higher one.
you'd
So you
have
didn't
to
use
roll
your
again.
dice.
Yes. So
Well, we
she
don't- we
actually-
Don't
so
need to use the
So you rolled a
the
24.
Well, it's
So
too.
don't
I
need to
mean,
use
it's
the
too
orc
late
dice.
now. You know.
No.
Roll your.
Got to
Roll
give
your.
me the fact that I don't know this character off by heart.
You seem to be very confident that you're understanding what the remnants
How
of Paul was
much damage
signalling
did
you.
do? Didn't use an Orc dice. Move along. Nothing to see here. Nothing
So
to see.
is it?
If we're going to go back in time, then you need to make that other roll. You never know. Could have been a 1, could have been a miss.
It
But it wasn't a
was
miss. It
24.
was 24.
That was the Ort dice roll.
No, that was the other roll. There's no extra
No,
D8.
there wasn't
on
any
that.
D8 applied to the
Only
roll.
because you didn't need it. No, we're not rebadging it. You determined, you declared you were using an Ort
Okay,
dice and you re-rolled.
Right.
Here we
Right.
go again.
Okay.
Right,
If
26.
you're going to run
that's-
somebody else's character, you've got to know everything about that character before you start.
So it's maximum. So it's surprise.
Shameless. The idea
Well,
that
of
you
course.
said you were going to use
Everything
an
I
Ort
do is
dice.
absolutely
And
shameless.
that therefore you had to go back, but that rebadging the other role. So no, that's because. Oh dear. Anyway, right, you hit
So-
with the first attack.
Is it surprised?
It's difficult to tell. I think we can agree that it didn't know that you were
And
there.
does maximum double damage. So
Off
it's
you go.
16, 21, 57 points of damage.
57
Okay,
points
yeah.
of damage. Okay,
And now the silent spell. And then the
Can
dissonant
Buggy do
whispers.
something as well?
hold up. I thought you'd already cast the silent spell.
I've cast the silent spell.
Yeah,
Right,
it's fine.
whatever.
I crossed it off about 2
Yes,
hours
I know.
ago.
It's about 2 hours ago. The
Mhm.
arrow stops flying through the air as it enters that area. It just stops like it's, well, entered a gelatinous cube. Hangs there. You don't know how much you've damaged the cube. It certainly doesn't collapse or anything, but you can see your arrow floating
It's probably resistant to piercing weapons.
in the gunge. If it is gunge. Let's move on.
Can I do a... Can I
Purple's-
fire something?
Can't we have a round each? We're all coordinated. We had the drop on the thing. If we decide to go first, then we ready,
If you're ready, okay.
then we all go at the same time.
Let's just do this. Fine. So you all readied, did you? So you're all just taking a single action, no movement, right? Uncle Buggy seems to have moved just then, but okay. It started with Sessions casting the silent spell, right? I'm really lost here.
Well, we're all going together.
But you don't literally go together. At some point, we have to unpick what the cause and effect and what happened first and second. Was the first thing that happened was Sessions casting the silent spell. And you were all readying an action. The moment that Sessions cast the silent spell, you had a pre-arranged action. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you didn't tell me that you were doing that when he was casting the silent spell.
No.
But if I'm being really nice and I'm saying, well, let's just hand wave that because, hey, you've got the opportunity to coordinate your actions and all go at once. Yeah. Oh, I see that Parker seems to have moved. That's interesting. Parker's moved there. That's interesting. I noticed that Sessions managed to move after he cast the silent spell, which is an odd thing to have happened. Yes, I think we better roll initiative. Let's just roll initiative. Okay, rolling for the nasties of Kios.
7 for Buggy.
16 for Parker. Alessandra gets a 20.
9 for Purple.
9 for Burple.
11
for Sessions. Sessions casts a spell. He darts back round the corner. As he's darting back, Alessandra, whose round we've already administered, who happens to be going first, luckily for us. Otherwise, this would be an absolute nightmare to unpick. The arrow is hanging suspended in whatever is in that doorway. On 16, it's Parker.
Well, I will start by moving north across the doorway, and I will do a produce flame, throw it at the gelatinous cube. It's +6. Armor class 10. Probably not.
Armor class 10 is a hit.
Wow. 11 points of damage.
Fire damage. You know, like when you hold a match or something or a cigarette lighter close to some sort of soft plastic and it kind of rolls away. Yep. You get a sense of that from your produce flame. The front of the cube, if it was a cube, seems to be diminished. Sessions on 11 seems to be going again.
No, doesn't everybody go... hasn't that action yet?
No. Sessions.
Sessions is thinking.
You can always do nothing.
I think Sessions will ready. Oh no! I tell you what, Sessions will. No, he'll do nothing. He'll float up into the ceiling on the sweepstake.
On to Burple on 9. I've got a weird
Remembering
feeling.
the new thing that I'm supposed to be saving all my spells for healing.
I've got a weird feeling that we are in the first round of
what?
Well, a lot.
The next 83
round
episode.
Yes, precisely. Yeah, we'll see everybody again in episode 131 or whatever.
Okay, so I'm going
to
do... I'm going to do haste on myself. Yes.
The nasties of Kios. The cube moves. It warbles, squirbles forwards towards you.
Okay.
You can see its contents a little bit more clearly. Buggy, Sandy, the two of you, Parker peeking around the corner. It's probably within the range of all of your dark visions. Bugraft and Sessions, how are you seeing? Bearing in mind it's dark down here.
Not very well then.
Flaming torch light.
Oh, and you've got your flame tongue. And following up behind it, the beetle starts to work its way into the space behind it. It works its way basically into the aperture, but doesn't really come any further. What you can see though is that the other beetle, you see it emerge from the darkness behind the first one. So now you've got effectively a queue of beetles, 2 beetles, Ringo and Paul, working their way through the aperture towards you behind the cube. I think that is it. That's it for now. And it is Uncle Buggy on 7.
I'll move up to the edge of the silent spell.
Yeah, I suggest we don't move into the room. That's probably the trigger for these dead bodies.
You might go through that. So I'm moving into the...
You're moving into the silent spell?
Silent spell, right on the edge in this aperture.
But you're in the silent spell, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, just slightly outside it.
Good.
Then I'm going to do a guiding bolt thing. Here
It's
we
a
go.
spell,
It's a spell
right?
attack. I rolled a 15.
Are you targeting the cube?
Yes,
Or are you targeting
the cube?
15 is going to be a hit. I mean, 100%.
15 points of radiant damage. The next attack roll made against the target before the end of your next turn has advantage thanks to mystical dim light.
Give me a perception check.
4.
No, fine.
Then I'm going to step 5 foot forward into the edge of the silence.
So you're 15 feet away from this cube. You can see the giant beetle just following up behind it. The beetle's only 30 feet away from you.
Probably moves 20 feet, doesn't he? Oh, no, sorry, I'm going to the edge of the... I'm outside the silence, on the edge of the silence.
You're outside the silence at the edge of the thing. Okay, top of round 2 of 60. It is Sandy on 20.
Sandy, I guess, will just also fire an arrow at it. She can't get the beetles behind unless she was to move into the room.
I think not. I think the cube is an obstruction.
Yeah. Hitting armor class.
Blimey, here we go with the dice again. That's a hit.
27. 7 points of piercing damage. There you go.
Okay. Give me a perception check.
24.
You don't think that your arrow has done an enormous amount of damage on this cube.
Every little counts.
But then it didn't anyway.
Did it do anything?
You think it's done something, yes.
Yeah, okay,
but you think that the cube is looking, what's the word? Unstable. On 16, if it is the real Parker,
well,
steps around into the
possibly
opening.
the real Parker. Steps round into the opening.
Steps out the street
next
light,
to
says
Buggy.
something like, you and me, babe. How about it?
How about it? And we'll do another produce flame.
On the cube.
So on the cube.
Roll to strike the cube.
Hitting armor class.
Hitting armor class 7 is a hit.
No, it's not, because it's a 1.
Oh, it's a 1. So that's that. It's just a miss. That's it. That's very pleasing. On 11, still trying to do as little as possible with his little cooking stove out and his sausages in a little pan. It is Sessions.
I think Sessions will swoon.
Really? Is everybody sure that Graham's okay?
Yeah, no, I think...
What are the 3 signs of stroke?
It's decisions. I shall just... I'm going to...
You're going to...
Yeah, no, I'm going to do nothing.
Purple on 9.
I'm going to continue to eat
Brilliant.
cheese.
Continue to eat cheese. Yeah. Sausage and cheese baskets.
Burple is going to run into the room, into the thing.
Yeah, you can see...
Flash his swords together,
Yes.
doing a lightning bolt, and run back again.
Okie dokie.
So that is 66,
Nice.
I believe. It's 11 plus... It's 19.
19 points of damage saved to half.
19 points of damage.
9 Shane
saved to half.
Das Electro Feren. Ooh, you know what was the DC?
Let me have a
That's
look.
save, 19.
I mean, a 19, it's got minus, that's a 15.
Ooh, it could be close.
DC 14, DC 14
It
dexterity.
saves against the lightning bolt.
Takes half damage.
Yeah. So it takes 9 points of damage.
And the beetle?
Beetle number 1, please. It's a fail for Beetle number 1.
19 Punkte M.
Electrozappen. Well, this cube looks yet more unstable. You don't know how long this cube can maintain its integrity for, but it maintains its integrity for long enough to splurple up towards you. And then the skeletons within it start to move.
How
In
many
it.
skeletons are there in it?
Just a couple
Or in the room.
in it.
In it, though.
In it,
They're
though.
kiosks.
They're
Kiosk
kiosks.
Kiosk knights.
They just seem like regular skeletons.
Presumably they took damage from the lightning bolt.
They might have taken damage, yes. On the other hand, they might have been awakened by the lightning bolt. Skeleton number 1 emerges from the G cube, and this is skeleton number 2. I can only apologise for the minis. First skeleton, we're going to call it the pink skeleton. It's going to attack Parker. It just sort of scratches at you. It's armor class at 25. Lucas
On a jet plane.
That's a hit.
2 points
Okay. Fair enough.
of bludgeoning damage, and its second scrabble at you. Hits armor class 24 for a further
Oh, I just realised.
7 points.
You had advantage,
Oh.
Parker, on your attack on the GQ because of my spell.
Bludgeoning damage. If only you hadn't burnt every single opportunity you could
rolled a
possibly
1,
ever
didn't you?
have for retrospective engineering. The second
You have
skelly
advantage because of my
scrabbles
spell.
at Bugraft, hitting armor class 20.
Yeah, that's a hit.
5 points of bludgeoning damage, and it misses with the second attack. But the skeletons have emerged from the cube. The bug squirgles up. Parker, Buggy, give me perception checks.
14.
4.
Okay. You don't know that the bug really gets the cube. It doesn't look like there's any kind of coordination here. In fact, if anything, it looks like the bug is just following. Maybe it's been trying to get through there for a while, and finally the cube has moved. The other bug kind of gets into the edge of the silent spell. Good Buggy on 7.
Well, I'll start raging. Get my flaming tongue sword out. Flame tongue.
Your flaming tongue sword out. Yep.
Flame tongue sword. Burst attack on the skelly. In
On
front.
the skeleton.
26.
This just looks like a normal skeleton.
23
not normal
points of
because it's
damage.
moving about. You vaporize that skeleton. It just bursts apart in a shower of bones that all go like a
And
xylophone.
I'll bash the one next to Parker.
Mm-hmm. For your second attack, it's a hit.
18, and I do 16
And
points
you
of damage.
smash that one apart as well.
And
Again.
then,
This time like a glockenspiel.
Well, assuming the G cube's going to block the aperture, I could move back.
It's just going to keep moving.
This is what you need
It's going to engulf you.
Yeah, so I can move back 10 feet and still not worry about the beetle coming through, because the G cube will come forward and block that aperture, so the beetle can't get through beyond the silent spell.
Are you sure it's not going to move
No.
right past that?
I think we need to stand
sure if
our
we did-
ground,
if
unfortunately,
We
but-
might kill the cube.
and kill the cube.
The cube's integrity looks under deep.
Okay, alright, I'll
threateningness.
start hold my ground then. Alright, that's it. That's my go.
Sandy on 20, round 3.
Sandy will continue to do what little damage she does, but every little counts.
I suppose I could have stepped forward, couldn't I? So you've got your sneak.
Hitting armor class.
Hitting armor class 11
is a hit on the cube.
for 10.
Oh, the cube collapses.
Nice.
It just, I mean, you haven't been doing great damage with these bow shots,
But enough.
but it doesn't matter because the cube was right at the point of collapse, and now you have precipitated a collapse. So your arrow sort of into it, it shudders and then just goes like a jelly that's been sat on a hot plate or something. And all of the bits in it start kind of clattering around on the floor. There's gelatin everywhere. It's like disaster in the Great British Bake Off. This glowing green crystal has to make a saving throw.
Ooh.
Is gently enough deposited on the ground not to shatter.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Anything else you want to do, Sandy?
No, I think that's... Actually, no,
Oh.
Sandy
Pick
will
up the-
move...
Pick up the gem.
I mean,
No, we don't want to move into the room yet, because that might trigger these dead creatures. No, Sandy will move...
Has anyone been in the
Parker,
room?
Buggy,
And back.
Sandy, give me perception
Hang on,
checks on that.
Burple's been in
point.
the room.
No, he hasn't.
Burple,
Yeah, that's true.
Burple ran
What?
in to do his thing and then ran back out. He didn't trigger any
No.
dead things. Why don't you give me a perception check, Parker and Buggy?
So 18 for Sandy,
20 natural.
Okay, Buggy,
and
these corpses, perfectly preserved corpses, have reacted exactly as you would expect corpses to react, were a gelatinous cube to steamroller over them and then a giant beetle to crunch across them. They haven't moved, they haven't animated, they don't seem to have been especially protected. You think that the jelly of the gelatinous cube has caused some damage, some dissolution, and then, of course, there's this beetle following up, crunching all over them. Parker,
Okay.
16.
we should step one step further forward, right? So that we engage the beetles. We don't allow them to get to the edge of the silent spell.
I think it's be safe where you
okay.
are, but I'd be inclined to go forward.
Yes, I am. I'm going to step forward.
It's not come out, has it? So
So there are bodies in the path between Parker and the beetle.
Yes, the full floor of the room is occupied by head to toe arranged, perfectly preserved corpses. Yeah.
has the
Is it?
has the cube rolling across the floor not cleared a bit of a path?
But like I said, just then, the cube has definitely affected the corpses as you would expect.
And acid,
Sorry, did you miss a bit?
acidy dissolved a lot of them.
The cube has definitely caused some dissolution of the corpses.
So there's a clear path.
There's
across
not a
the
clear path across the room, no. There are remnants of the bodies strewn in your path.
Okay.
There's a path across.
Well,
So
I
you're saying
will
there's
go
a
up
chance.
to the beetle
Yeah.
and thump it.
You're standing right next to this crystal. It's on the floor at your feet.
Yeah. Armor class 19.
Is a hit on the beetle.
That's 18 points.
Got it? Yep.
Next attack hits armor class 18.
Is another hit. Doesn't look like these things are too
9
difficult to
points
hit.
of slashing and 4 points of fire.
Yep.
Oh,
Okay.
a
20. Do you want to roll to
critical.
confer? You might as well. Doesn't hurt. That's going to be enough.
17.
Let me just deal you a card. What does it say?
Shin bash. Maximum damage and roll the damage dice again.
Okay, so what was the
Is
original
that
damage you just did?
including- So the original...
Yeah, we'll just do maximum damage and you roll the damage again. We won't get into double anything. So just what was the...
Right, but what about my savage attack?
First things first. You do maximum damage and it's doubled because it's a critical. What's the maximum damage on the dice?
12. So then that would be
Okay.
24 plus 3 is 27.
And then, what else does it say on the card?
Roll again.
And roll the damage
Yeah, so
dice.
roll the damage dice again. Yep.
6 points.
And then you have your savage attack.
Yeah. Which is 4 more. And then I have one last, and this could be cool if this... Oh, no, it's a 10.
10 is a miss. Is that it? Are you done?
And then I will move back again
Yep.
1 square inside the...
Yeah, you'll stay inside the silence.
Yeah, stay inside the silence, but move back away from it. If I understand correctly, I can interact with an object on my way back and pick up the diamond.
I can't see why not. You snaffle the crystal
Yeah.
on 11 sessions.
I'll reposition myself. I'm going to move,
The sausages from one side of the pan to the
yeah.
other.
and I'll offer a piece of cheese to Burple.
Okay.
Oh, thank you very much. What's this?
It's Gruyere.
Ah, do you have any bread?
Of course.
On 9, it's Burple. You can
Okay.
spend your round asking
Burple.
questions about the cheese.
No, I'm doing that as a free option, a free action.
Free luncheon.
I'm going to
Free
say.
option.
So,
Free
can you get any bread?
interaction with the cheese.
Can you get some bread? I'll be back in a sec. And then I'm going to go up, run through Bugraft, up to the first beetle, strike it on the head with the Sword of Zosiel, hitting armor class.
Oh dear.
Armor class. I don't believe
Oh,
it.
of course, I don't believe it.
Well, I'm going to use a Ort dice.
What number have you hit? Oh,
I hit 11.
okay, that was a miss. Yeah. But the Ort dice, 13 is enough.
10 points plus
It looks very wounded.
another 3 points of lightning
It
damage.
looks
plus-
very close to death. Oh, it's dead. It's
Plus another 16
your,
points.
your sword plunges through its carapace
1, 2,
and
3,
it
4.
slurbles to the floor in a wash of horrible beetle eviscera.
And then I'll go up to the second beetle.
Yes.
And I shall hit that beetle with my Sword of Icosiel, hitting armor class 12.
It's a miss.
And I shall hit it again with the Sword of Zosiel.
2.
You need to get those bad dice
Welcome
rolls
to
out,
Target.
I'm afraid.
You're inside the silent spell in the doorway with Parker and Buggy.
Yeah.
You've got rid of one beetle. Parker has got the crystal.
So annoying and missed the other two
Silent
attacks.
spell is sitting in front of you. Time for the nasties of Keys.
Can you get back out of the way so I can get through?
That's my
Right.
full move.
The first thing that happens in the round of the nasties of Keys. The second beetle,
Does a dispel magic on the
Runs
second beetle.
away.
takes out a wand. Now, I'm just having a look
Transforms
at
into a wizard.
I'm going to roll the dice. 1 to 3, 4 to 6. Okay. That beetle looks like it's thinking better of heading towards you. And it clicks away
so
from
it's
you.
intelligent now.
It's not intelligent. That's why I rolled the dice. It's got a 50-50 chance of either pushing on or whatever. But it does understand that its fellow beetle has just been squished. It does understand that much. So like a ant running away from a ant damager, you can see it disappear off into the darkness on the other side of the second choke point. That's the first thing that happens.
That's annoying.
Second thing that happens. Uncle Buggy, from the east,
I knew it.
Doors open.
through the door,
Angels.
comes Angel number 3, please. And
Oi, you, give me my hit points back.
Angel number 2, please. And Angel number 1, please. They burst forth through the doors, recorporealizing as they streak towards you. And as they do so, they hold their arms outstretched and transform into great swords wreathed in flickering green flame. And we will find out how much trouble you're in, whether or not these angels give you an opportunity perhaps to win back some of your stolen hit points when we pick things up next week.
Great.
Well, we got rid of one beetle. That's a...
I think we should try and get rid of the other beetle if we can.
That's what Mark Chapman said. Fiona, welcome to the command pod.
Thank you.
Take a seat anywhere.
Oh, okay.
Anywhere. Not there. That's a bit of Paul. Don't worry about that. So let's talk about What Am I Rolling?
Yeah.
2 shows a month. Is that right?
2 episodes a month, and then maybe some bonus episodes depending on how I'm feeling and how much I've got.
And
in
it's
the
a mixture of sort of one-shots that aren't really one-shots because they span multiple episodes, but that's just the way of the pod. Is there such a thing as the way of the pod?
The way of the pod.
Now.
Yeah.
And then you've got Q&A little talk show segments with people. The reason we're talking, Fiona, is because Johnny, readers, you know Johnny, is listening to one of your Cthulhu one-shots.
Ah, interesting, yes.
I don't know which one that is. You'll have to tell me because we can't listen to it because he wants to run it.
Oh, interesting. So I think it will be only one, because I've only put one on the podcast, which I believe is Amidst the Ancient Trees, which is a fascinating one from the core rulebook. But I have run other ones recently off podcast, so that's why I had to take a moment to think about it. But yeah, that's a really good one. That's the first adventure that I got introduced to when I first started playing. Someone ran Call of Cthulhu and ran that adventure for me, and I knew instantly that I wanted to run that for other people. So that's very exciting, actually.
Johnny has decided that he wants to run this Cthulhu thing as a one-shot, and in order to get himself prepped, just that brilliant shortcut is to listen to somebody else play through it, and then you've just got it all in your head. Just terrific. I listened to your Fiasco one-shot, which I thought was just really interesting. Tell us about some of the games that you've covered.
What I tend to do, I try and take games that I find really interesting. When I started the podcast, I backed so many Kickstarters, and of course then they all came, and then I left them in a big pile by the side of my bed and never read them. And then I thought, well, I want to start going through them. So stuff like Fiasco is a great game, and it's different to what we normally think of a role-playing game, Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, all that sort of thing, where it's like dice rolling and using the power of imagination and mental math, and some people are like, oh, that's a bit too much for me. So what I try to explore is like different systems that don't necessarily rely solely on dice rolling, but sometimes we do systems that are purely dice rolling. For me, some of my favourite games have been ones where we've not used dice at all. So the ones I always mention are ones by J Dragon, so it's Possum Creek Games, and we've done one called Sleepaway, where you play summer camp counsellors, and you are... It's a bit like Powered by the Apocalypse in a way. Like you have certain archetypes. So you have the arts and crafts teacher, you have like the rope master, etc. But your aim of the game is that you're trying to protect the kids from this thing called the Lindworm, this sort of camp horror story, that you sit around the campfire and you try and protect them. But it could be something that is like a physical manifestation. Like, so there is a monster that's in the woods that is trying to steal the children. Or it could be something that the counsellors have come up with against themselves, and that's their way of going from that from being children at the camp to being adults, and that having that coming of age thing. So I've done stuff like that, which I find really interesting. But also I've done stuff like solo RPGs, which is very interesting to do on a podcast thing. I don't know if anyone listens to them.
How do you do a solo? You talk through your own. That sounds cool.
Yeah, it's so I've done a whole range of solo RPGs. A lot of solo RPGs are very much reflective and isolating, so they might not be for everyone. But what I'm trying to do is always trying to find that, like, if it's got an interesting mechanic or a different sort of genre that I want to do, I will usually read the rulebook through once, try not to spoil it too much for myself, and then I'll go and I'll just speak my thoughts aloud. And so I could be in my soundproof closet or whatever for a good 5 hours talking to myself. But like one I did recently was Longhorn 1983, where I was playing like a trucker across America and using cards and stuff to talk about events. And essentially, I'd woken up one morning and everyone had disappeared bar myself. And how do I deal with that sudden like apocalypse in a way, and having to get across country to find someone that I loved and deal with that sort of fallout. But then there are other solo games like Quill, which is like a letter writing one, which is a little bit of dice rolling as well, where you had to write a letter responding to a scenario, and then you'd roll to see how well you wrote the letter, if it was presented beautifully. And then at the end, the total score shows how it was well received. It was not very well received, I will tell you that. I rolled very poorly in that solo RPG.
Right. What I love about this is the idea of introducing people to myriad different games and systems and opportunities.
Yeah.
The reason we like to get people on our show, which is just a silly old people playing D&D, that's obviously quite a one-note experience. I think our readers will attest to that. But we like to get people on to talk about other podcasts, other shows, other games, just simply because it just kind of broadens, because there's so much out there, and it's just so interesting to get people in to talk about what they do. I've been listening to your conversation with Graham Davis, because he is a bit of a ledge.
Yes.
Readers, Graham Davis developed Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, which the Elders of the Hilltop played an awful lot of in the 80s, which ages us. I mean, he was making light of or doing that, I'm so old, that was ages ago. And I just thought, this doesn't sound like ages ago, this sounds like me. It just made me feel older and older the more he went on. Graham Davis wrote The Enemy Within. My view is the greatest adventure path.
I'll be honest, I did not know anything about Graham Davis until I did the research for that interview, because I'm not necessarily the target audience for Warhammer, although that is changing, I know. So it was absolutely fascinating to get on to talk about something that was obviously not what he's really known for. Obviously with Vassan, this sort of expansion that he's really into folklore, but then he just sort of offhandedly sort of mentioned like, I've also done all these things, but that's not what I want to talk about. And I'm just like, oh wow, he's got lots of stuff on it. So it was, and it's fascinating how I guess people who when their careers expanded over several years, they're like, I'm working on this now, but this is what I did in the past, but that's not important. This is important.
I think what was interesting about the people that did fantasy roleplay, certainly my opinion, is that they took something that was basically built off the skeleton of everybody knows Warhammer, right? Just hordes of plastic things running around hitting each other on the head, and turned it into a role-playing game with less shouting.
Yes.
and more unease. That was when Games Workshop were, polymathic in a way that they aren't anymore. They used to produce role-playing games and surrounding content. And White Dwarf was a magazine which had stuff for D&D, stuff for Traveller. Nowadays, it would be a fantastic... I mean, is there a really good general interest role-playing game magazine nowadays?
Well, there's Weird Science, which has started to come out in the last year or so. Forgive me, I can't remember the name of...
I'll make a note of that.
Yeah, Weird Science, so WYRD Science. And you can get that on Itch and Drive-Thru RPG. I will say, I do have a vested interest in it because I am mentioned in the last issue by my flatmate Mira, who does contribute to the thing. That's cool. I know. What's quite cool about it is that they will go through and they will look at different RPGs and talk to other game designers, but it looks very beautiful, very sort of stylistic, uses a couple of old images, that sort of old style that you see in like maybe OSR games for the illustrations and stuff. But it's very clean, block colours for the covers, and it's quite thick as well. Like the interviews and stuff, it's like a little booklet. But you can get it digitally as well. So yeah, I'd recommend Weird Science. Oh, there we are.
Sure. See, that's my question answered. I'm so completely out of touch. The kinds of people you've been getting on for your chats are really interesting people with quite a lot of experience in the industry, right? In the gaming sphere. And you said, has anybody got anybody that you like us to talk to? I don't know if you can find this person, but there's somebody called Richard Pett. Richard Pett with 2 T's. He writes creepy, really interesting, kind of slightly gonna get under your skin adventures. He's written for Pathfinder, and our readers will know about, but you won't, Fiona. Lucky you. We're running through this enormous old adventure path from ancient times. And book 8 was written by Richard Pett, called The Prince of Red Hand. And it's creepy and weird. Again, he wrote something called The Skinsaw Murders, a really iconic Pathfinder adventure path chapter. If you could get him on.
Yeah, absolutely. I will take up that challenge and I'll see what I can do.
Yeah,
and I
Richard
appreciate
Pett.
it. Yeah, Richard Pett.
How did you get into role-playing games? I don't know why I said it in such a weird way. What got you started?
Where do I begin? So I originally started because I'm a bit of a nerd in general. So when I went to university and stuff, I was part of like the Doctor Who Society. I was always into very geeky things. And when I moved to London, I realised quite quickly that there wasn't... you always have that thing where suddenly you are in a new place and you have to make new friends. And I was suddenly at this sort of crossroads about what do I do? And I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll look online and see what there is. And I got an advert for, it's now called Quad Ball, but at the time it was Quidditch. And I just made a decision to just fully basically make that my personality for 5 years. I helped grow the London team up, then we got other teams and all that sort of thing. And then when I was leaving, because I was like, there's only so much you can do. And that's like with all communities, there gets to a point where you're like, maybe I need to change something or move on or something like that.
Right.
In the 6 months before I left, I got invited to a board games evening, or what I thought was a board games evening. And of course, typically I turned up late. And they're like, oh, brilliant, we're just starting to play D&D. And it'd always been one of those things where I'd always wondered what it was. But because, as I'm sure many people who are getting into role-playing games now, didn't necessarily have a group of friends who did it or ran regular games. And it was at the time where I think like stuff like Meetup wasn't as prevalent, or wasn't something that I was using more. Nowadays, you can see there's so many ways to play online games. You've got forums, you've got all these sort of things. So I sat down and I played, and we did the starter adventure of Lost Mines of Phandelver, and it took us like a year to do. And I got the rules wrong completely. Like for the first 3 or 4 sessions, I didn't add anything to my D20. So I was like, why can't I hit anything? And I realised that obviously there's all these lovely modifiers. Yeah. So I thought to myself, and then it was at this sort of time when I was starting to think about podcasting and looking into other RPGs, and I thought, well, why not actually try? And so I obviously, again, based my whole personality around it. I bought all the books and I did some reading. And it was actually quite nice like I said, the podcast for me was like a mixture of 3 things, which was learn how to do some like podcast recording for work in a sense, like develop some transferable skills, because you always have to say that in your CVs, right? Oh, I did this. Wanted to actually read all the books I'd bought and actually then have a reason to sort of like bring something to a night with my friends that wasn't necessarily a board game, because as much as I love board games, and I'm sure you're the same, there's always that awkward first half an hour you're sat down reading the bloody PDF or the manual, and it's like this is boring. And I thought to myself, if I can come with something and people don't have to worry about like stuff. And then the sort of reason why I've not done too much D&D on What Am I Rolling, although obviously I have another podcast that does a lot of D&D lore.
Oh, what's that? You need to tell us about that.
Oh, I will tell you that. So that's the DM's Book Club. So that's a weekly book club podcast.
Oh, I know the DM's Book Club. Is that the thing you do with Hamilton? Do you do that with Hamilton?
I do that with Hamilton. Yeah. So
it's
yes,
just such a small world.
It's a very
I didn't realise that.
World. Yeah. I realised that, as I'm sure you know as well, when you play D&D, it gets to a point where you've played so much D&D that you can maybe predict what is about to happen to you. It's a mimic. Okay, this is what I know about mimics. And it's that unconscious sort of like meta thing turns out you go, oh, I know what it is.
We would never I can hear our readers we would never allow any kind of meta behavior in our game.
Of course not. And I don't think for a moment that people do it deliberately, although again depending on your gaming group, right?
But
I thought to myself, what would be better for me, who's just starting out as a GM or in a DM? I thought, I know, I'm going to run games that nobody else knows, because then they can't question my authority on it. And that it worked really well for my confidence.
That is genius.
Yeah, and I've not really looked back since. Like I've run D&D quite regularly for like a home game that we keep off podcast. But a lot of time you'll find me, like recently I've run a few horror games for the show. I'm planning to run Alien for a big stream happening in January, and I actually interviewed Andrew E. Gasker, who's the lead writer and obviously a famous sci-fi person himself. I've just interviewed him.
Okay, so we love Alien. We meet up twice a year. The Elders of the Hilltop, which is just the gaming group. Not all of us are on the podcast, but all of us do gather twice a year to play D&D. Gather sounds weird. It makes it sound like we all arrive in coaches.
That sounds amazing. I wish I could rent an Airbnb and do that.
A long time ago we started doing this, like 20 years ago. We meet a couple of times a year, once in the spring, once in the autumn. And what we tend to do is we tend to pick stuff that is not the normal week-to-week games that we play. And that I ran Chariot of the Gods.
I've been reading up about that one. It's great. I'm reading that one and Destroyer of Worlds, and I know Heart of Darkness has just come out as well. And each one of the stories, obviously, it's part of a bigger overarching thing, has so many interesting bits in it.
They're just amazing. Yeah, they are amazing.
I played in Destroyer of Worlds, and I did the one thing where I entered a room and didn't look up. And let's just say I didn't survive very long in that room.
Destroyer of Worlds is very alien-y and very combat heavy.
Yes.
It's much more marine-y. Chariot of the Gods is basically a cross between the Alien movie and one of those murder mystery dinner parties. Yeah.
It's much more enclosed, much more claustrophobic.
And you get handed cards with secret stuff on.
great.
It's kind of made us role play in a way that we wouldn't normally. And then the atmosphere is just fantastically done. And you've spoken to
Andrew
that is awesome.
Igaska, yeah. And I will say as well, Heart of Darkness, the latest one out, that's very Aliens 3 because it's definitely.
I'm reading it now.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to a podcast in order to teach myself how it works because I am running it at the next gathering, which is not this weekend but next weekend. I'm running Heart of Darkness.
Oh,
so
how exciting.
We didn't talk about Varson, but that sounds like a really interesting game.
Yeah, really fun game. It's like, again, if you like your Cthulhu and you like your horror, but you want it to be more fae or folk-like, set in sort of the industrial era of the frozen north in Norway or in Britain, I would go for that. It's a different dice system as well. And I think all of it feels very much like if you've ever played Monster of the Week or want to do something like Buff, if you want to have like a base somewhere, it feels very much like that.
How does Monster of the Week work?
Monster of the Week...
Is it explainable in that way?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Monster of the Week, I believe, and I know you'll get your readers coming going, oh, that's not it. But I see it as it's a...
How do you know what they sounded like? I'm sorry, carry on.
Maybe some of your readers also subscribe to my podcast, and I get that too.
Well, yeah, they will be after this.
Oh, I hope so. Monster of the Week is a Powered by the Apocalypse game where essentially a lot of it is like almost improvised or made up, like a proper group collaboration thing, but you can have a base, and like very much like in Buffy, or like they have their bases in the library, and you'll have certain archetypes, certain roles. So you'll have like the chosen one, the reluctant, or whatever, like, and they'll have certain power moves that they can do, and that's sort of it from there. The Powered by the Apocalypse, they take those sort of different types and you can put them into different games. So when I'm thinking of Vasan, you have a similar concept, but instead of, it's a different dice rolling mechanic for what they do there. It's a bit more involved in that. But I also quite like with Vasan, which may be a spoiler for Vasan, I don't know, is that you don't always win through combat. You have to figure out... I know. You have to figure out like clues and work out, because obviously the real sort of tension, and what I find really juicy about Vasan, is that all the sort of people of the Fae have been keeping the boundaries, they've keeping people safe, they're farming, all that sort of thing, as what we hear about in folklore, right? But with the speeding up of industrialization, that is sort of encroaching on their lands, and so they're getting upset and they're starting to rebel, and so that's why maybe children go missing, or there's weird lights in the forest or something like that. So you would have to go and sort of
weird
help.
Lights in the forest is such a well,
it's such a true thing, right? And it's and again, you can take any of these creatures that I spoke about in folklore, like the Nuklavi, which is this horrible horse-like thing, which has got a great illustration of, I would say. You can't necessarily kill it, but you can appease it in some way, and how do you work that out? So it's a bit of a locked room, sort of maybe like thinking outside the box, like how do you form a ritual to stop them from destroying the lands around them? Or like what's causing them to be upset in this way? And usually it's our fault, it's mankind's fault rather than their fault. Right. So I just thought that's such an interesting way of talking about stories, whereas Call of Cthulhu is obviously like, well, this is something horrible, which we can't imagine, and they don't care. They're going to kill us no matter what we do. So
Cthulhu's got that sort of finality to it.
Exactly.
My problem with Cthulhu is, spoiler alert, it's Cthulhu. Yeah? It's like...
You could say the same thing about Alien, the RPG. Like, well, I'm sure the alien will turn up at some point.
That's true. Although, Heart of Darkness... Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know. Well, spoilers for that. Yeah.
Well, this won't go out. My players won't hear this before we play it next weekend, so there we go. Let's talk about podcasting.
Yeah.
What got you started, and how do you make it?
How do I make it? Yes.
How do you make it? You edit yours, you publish yours, you do all of that work, or is it somebody
I'm
else?
a one-woman podcast machine. The reason I started out, I actually went to a workshop that was here in London, and I was like, it's actually quite easy to put out a podcast, and I highly recommend to any of your readers, actually, if you ever thought about doing a podcast but not sure, just do it. Don't worry about it. Like, you're
doing very well with the readers thing, by the way. I'm very impressed.
I don't have anything like that on my podcast. I just talk at people and hope they don't respond. So
that sounds. I think the guys would say that was
ideal
as well. Yeah.
But then what I used to do, again, I started the What Am I Rolling? I started in the before times. So I actually had it's a HN4 Zoom recorder. And so I'd plonk that in the middle of the table. They're not great, but it was like, we're still alive, and you could always hear somebody, I don't know, munching in the background, somebody bloody...
Sound quality is pretty good, I think. I dipped into some earlier programs,
Oh, I definitely have one where somebody goes in and cooks like a stir-fry halfway through, and of course, back then, Fiona was like, I'm sure it's fine, and then obviously future Fiona was like, you should have just paused. It's fine. But then we obviously went to online, and because of the great event, and I realised that, it's a lot easier to record people and control audio quality through stuff like Zencaster or through stuff like Zoom. Make it very easy for people and also through accessibility, like you can give out digital character sheets, or people can look up stuff much easier, have their own snacks, and they can mute themselves when narrating it. But also it meant I could play with other people or run games for other people in different time zones. I can't tell you how much that was almost like a universe mind moment, because I was like, oh, there's a whole world of people out there that I can run games with or playing games with that will obviously do a different style of story to me or run the game slightly different, and I can learn from them. And it's been absolutely great. So I don't look back now. So I use stuff like Zencaster or Zoom to record stuff, and then I'll go through and edit mostly myself out, because I'm the one that goes, let me look this up for 20 minutes. And look
I recognise that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But honestly, I rarely edit any of the players, because usually what they say is really good. And I also, when I'm editing, what I sort of think about is like, what's the key thing that listeners of my show want to know? So like, it's all very well listening to an actual play of something like D&D. People will know it's a D20 roll and add something, right? But if you start off...
is that?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
There you go. That's my first big tip. Roll a D20
Thought
and hope
we've been doing
for
something
it.
wrong.
Yeah. But when I'm describing, say, for example, solo RPGs, sometimes it's quite difficult to be like, oh, do this, this, and this. Whereas I find it a lot easier now to write out, this is the main mechanic you need to look out for, and talk about the success levels, and then bring that as sort of the big recap. So they don't need to know everything about the combat if we don't go into it, all that sort of things. But I'm like, here's the main rule you should look out for when we're telling these stories. And I think that's so important, because a lot of times I will go and look at actual plays and see how other people have run games so I can get the mechanics in my head. And sometimes they don't talk about the mechanics at all, even if it's just for 5 minutes at the beginning. And I know it's super boring for people because they want to get on with playing, but it's so important.
Right. No, this is 100%. That's why I'm listening. I want to know how it works. I don't want to. Right. Okay.
I think it's really interesting, because I think, because obviously there's lots of, for example, Dungeons & Dragons obviously one of the most popular role-playing game of all time, thanks to streaming. And you've got big shows like Dimension 20, Critical Role, High Rollers, all these different Americanized shows, and they do it like a TV show, and that's absolutely amazing. And they've got great acting, great role-play, whatever. But they just assume you have this knowledge. And okay, it's okay to assume, but I can't imagine, you might be inspired to run a game, but actually then, look at all these books, look at all these, it's actually quite intimidating, especially again, as before, maybe digital accessibility. So you didn't get the rules on a PDF or on a digital platform like D&D Beyond or Debbie Plane is the other one. So it's now much more accessible. But I feel like if you're not sure about running games and you don't have maybe the capacity to read big, thick books, we need actual plays, even if it's, sorry, I'm jumping around a bit. The Call of Cthulhu, for example, there's an absolutely great quick start guide on how to create a character, how to roll, etc., by one of the writers who did it as a quick video on his YouTube channel. And it was great. It's got over 100,000 views or whatever, because it's the only one that does it in under 7 minutes. That's what we need. We need more sort of how-to videos that aren't, you can have the actual plays, that's not a problem, but I think more how-to videos on literally the mechanics is what's going forward. And that's why I hope with my podcast is here's the mechanics. You can listen to this episode if you want, but if you only need to listen to that first 5 minutes, that's totally okay with me.
Yeah, so the Fiasco one that you did, that I dipped into, I didn't, how far am I through it? Anyway, whatever. Very succinctly and clearly went through the character setup, the connections and relationships and locations and all of the effectively the story building elements that then roll through the game for a game which is, like you said, is slightly away from a strongly GM'd game. Getting your head around these games can be a little bit difficult. There's a sort of perspective moment where you realize what's going on. I thought that the way that you brought that Fiasco game to life, as it were, at the beginning, was really, really good.
Thank you.
I just thought this is terrific.
And I will say on that Fiasco, so that's Fiasco by Bully Pulpit Games.
Bully Pulpit, yeah. It's
such a different way of role-playing games, because I always refer to it as rules light and crunchy. And obviously crunchy, I'd say Dungeons & Dragons to an extent, but Warhammer, all those sort of things where you get really into it and you can really customize. For some people, that's what they want. They want to do the math stuff. Some people just want to do pure role play and explore characters that they're not so sure. And I think everyone, maybe yourself included, loves a Coen Brothers film. And that's what Fiasco does. It's here are all these weird sort of story threads that all come together for some sort of theme. And working that out together, I think it is one of my favourite games to play, especially because you can replay it over and over again with different people and you get different results every time. And it's something a little bit different. And I think more people should play Fiasco. I think there is a podcast on Fiasco that's out, or does it every so often puts an episode out with celebrity players.
I've been watching Ted Lasso.
What a great, so good. I love Ted Lasso.
Right. And Ted Lasso it's like Fiasco.
Yeah.
Here are the characters, here's the location, here is the shared experience. These are their relationships, these are their connections. I mean, it is. It's like determine all of those and then start the story
Yeah.
running and see where it takes you. Having said that, I had just been listening to your podcast before I started watching Ted Lasso, so maybe that slightly coloured my experience.
I second that recommendation for Ted Lasso. Certainly the first season.
Oh.
And that first episode, it's this idea, all it is that what if a nice person from America comes over and the British people just reacting to like, this person cannot be this nice. And it's absolute joy. And I love anything that's based in London and Richmond, all that sort of thing. Like, I love films that are based in places that I know. But also, I just love how it just seems so organic, so sort of like natural. Like, you like, and people are just confused by how nice this person is and how I should dislike him, but I can't because he's not done anything wrong.
We mustn't talk about Ted Lasso for too long because we'll be here forever.
Well, I'll say as well. So it sounds like you've only in season 1, so I will not spoil season 2 for you. So, but let me know what you think when you get to the end of it, because I definitely was crying by the end of it.
Okay, don't tell me stuff like that. As our readers will be all too aware, we know absolutely nothing about role-playing games. It is refreshing and brilliant to finally have somebody on to talk to us who really does actually know what they were talking about for once.
Oh.
When's the next episode out?
Of which one?
of What Am I Rolling?
What Am I Rolling? So that's every 2 weeks on a Sunday. Usually comes out at 6:30 GMT or BST, depending on where we are in time zones. And then DM's Book Club, that's weekly on Wednesdays, again 6:30. And with DM's Book Club, we talk about anything. It could be like whole big adventures or campaign settings. And then actually recently, I actually did a solo choose your own path, I think it's called, or you can't say the adventure one because it's copyrighted, but there's a spooky...
Like fighting fantasy thing?
Kind of. It was by a company called Catacomb Books or something like that, where you had like a choose your own path adventure style book where you would choose your path, and then when you came into combat, you'd roll a d12 and you had to get a number, like say 8 or under in order to hit. And so I played through a game called Night, as in KNIGHT, of the Living Dead. And I've just finished that now.
Deary me.
And it's I really enjoyed it, but I got very cross at the end.
Right.
So yeah, actual plays are everywhere, even in books where you choose your own adventure.
So your next episode is going to be more...
so the next Where episode, I'm hopefully going back to some actual plays, because I know the last couple of episodes have been quite interview heavy, which has been absolutely lovely that people would like to talk to me about their games, but in mains I've now got a bit of a backlog. So I'm hoping we're going to put out Paranoia, but it's the red
fantastic
clearance box set, which is typically after we recorded it. I found out that there's going to be the perfect edition coming out, but hopefully we'll just organise some logistics.
Don't think that matters.
Brilliant. It does matter a little bit because they've changed all the rules, but I am going to be interviewing those folks behind the new edition in the next couple of weeks as well. So it's all kismet in a way. You find out stuff, you email, and you get through. So
this is like a proper show for you that you have. Honestly, I know you can't be that familiar with us because nobody is. If you had, by the way, any concept that you were coming on for this chat in order to kind of build your audience, I've got some bad news for you. Only 5 people were here.
I love chatting to anyone and who will listen to me and give me the airtime to talk about this stuff.
No, we can certainly give you that. Okay, so Paranoia is the next one shot that you're going to be running through. Fantastic, and you've got more interview shows coming up. Readers, I implore you to check out the What Am I Rolling podcast, and the other one, the Hamilton one that we didn't know about, which is a massive coincidence, the DM's Book Club. As always, you can find us on social media. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter at Billowing Hilto. You can see our character art and our maps and charts and all sorts of other stuff on our Tumblr at billowinghilltop.tumblr.com. And of course, you can always email us at hello@billowinghilltop.com. We will stuff your message into Paul's sack for later retrieval. Fiona, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
It was great to chat. And readers, we'll see you next week.
The Billowing Hilltop podcast is a Billowing Hilltop production. Dungeons & Dragons is a trademark of Wizards of the Coast. The Spire of Long Shadows and Age of Worms are copyright Paizo. The Spire of Long Shadows was written by Jesse Decker. Music is from Kevin MacLeod and Incompetech.com and is used with thanks under the Creative Commons license. Additional music and sound effects come from the wonderful Sirenscape. All other original material is copyright Billowing Hilltop. Role-playing games are all about getting people together, and we use Roll20 as our tabletop, the perfect place to host your game, and Discord to host our chat. Thanks for listening!